So placentation is the formation of the placenta, and you probably are aware of that the placenta is the organ that allows the feeding of the developing fetus directly by the maternal blood supply. So this allows there to be a direct connection between maternal and fetal blood supply. And so it is this which allows the developing embryo to get glucose. It allows them to get amino acids and other nutrients and other vitamins and minerals from the mother's blood supply. It also allows them to get oxygen because their lungs are non-functioning, obviously. And so they get their oxygen and get rid of their CO2 across the placenta as well. So remember that it is the trophoblast that embeds early on during embryonic development. So if we were to look at the structure here in the formation of the placenta, we have the cytotrophoblast, and then we have the syncytotrophoblast, which allows for kind of an invasion of the embryo into the lining of the uterus. You can also see that there are maternal blood vessels that are forming here, and so that there's going to eventually be a connection between the maternal circulation and the fetal circulation. So the part of the fetus, the part of the fetus that becomes the placenta is actually what is referred to as the chorion, and the chorion produces these villi, these finger-like extensions, where we have capillaries that are going to exchange substances with the maternal blood. And so when we look at the fetal portion of the placenta, it is formed by the chorion. So this is what is referred to as an extra embryonic membrane. What does that mean? That means that it is not actually going to be part of the embryo, the developing embryo. So it's kind of interesting. After the baby is born, the the placenta is still in there. And so it has to separate from the lining of the uterus, and you actually have to deliver the placenta separately from delivering the newborn. The connection between the placenta and the mother, and excuse me, the fetus and the placenta is the umbilical cord. But this is the chorion, and it forms chorionic villi, which are finger-like extensions. So we have the chorionic villi. Okay, so that's the fetal part of the placenta. If we look at the maternal part of the placenta, we can see a diagram here that shows this is the placenta right here, and the maternal part is called the Decidua Basalis. So maternal portion of placenta is the Decidua Basalis. And so you can see that what happens here is that there's like this little space, and the maternal blood goes into these spaces and bathes the fetal capillaries. And then, so these are the chorionic villi. And so oxygen and nutrients, for example, are picked up, and then they go to the fetus via the umbilical cord. So when we look at the umbilical cord, it is actually fetal in origin. So the umbilical cord, fetal in origin. And we actually have one umbilical vein, and 2 umbilical arteries. And so arteries and veins are actually named as whether they're taking blood away from the heart or towards the heart. So this is kind of backwards as to what you might think. So when we look at the umbilical arteries, they're actually carrying blood from the, umbilical arteries. They are carrying blood away from the fetus and towards the placenta. So when we look at the umbilical arteries, they are blue. So unoxygenated. Traveling from the fetus to the placenta. The umbilical veins vein on the other hand, the one umbilical vein here is red. So it is carrying blood back to the heart of the fetus. And so that's why it's called a vein, but it is oxygenated. So the umbilical veins O2-rich blood back to the fetus. It's also important to realize that the placenta also produces hormones. And so you'll remember that early on during embryonic development, one of the things that is maintaining the lining of the uterus is the presence of the corpus luteum. So the corpus luteum is maintained because the early embryo is producing HCG, right? So that maintains the lining, the estrogen and progesterone produced by the ovaries are maintaining the lining. But when the placenta forms, it takes over the role of the corpus luteum. So the placenta, this is what produces estrogen and progesterone, the estrogens and the progesterone that maintain the pregnancy. There we go. So that is important role of that. And we're also going to talk about what happens during parturition, where you're inducing the uterus to contract and actually force the developing fetus out at the end of pregnancy. And so this would be the structure of the placenta, which has both maternal and fetal cells. So it's kind of like this combo organ that is temporary and only is found within pregnant females.